I really did. I'm Rachel Heine, and with me as always is Geek and Sundry's wonderful, wonderful Hector Navarro.
Wonderful Hector Navarro.
Yes. Maud is currently trying to reverse a prophecy that will bring us into a Bradbury-esque dystopia. Will it bring us out of there? So we wish her well. Joining us today for the first time ever is Nerdist associate editor and one of my favorite people, Kyle.
Yay, Kyle!
So happy to be here. Thanks, you guys, for having me. I will do my best to fill in for Maud. I will be less Australian, first of all.
Cool.
I'll do my best otherwise.
You need to throw your book at least once.
Okay. But I really like it.
Yeah.
I don't want to throw.
What
puns,
else?
We'll need some puns.
Oh, that I could probably.
And you need to be like
real hammy wink.
1,000% drunker. That's just, that's Maud all the time. I'm calling you out, Maud. You have a problem.
You need to like, it needs to just mugging the camera, just like.
Yeah. Okay.
It's so great. That was a good one. So, because we're on Alpha Book Club, which is about books, y'all, Kyle, we like to chat a little bit when we have new people about our favorite books, what got you into reading, what kind of reader you are, all that fun stuff. So, for everyone who doesn't know you in the chat, hi, chat.
Hi, chat. Thanks, DeMarco Draws and Lost the Numbers.
Kyle is very cool.
Yeah, they're arguing over how cool I am.
Yeah.
Varying degrees.
Very cool.
Very. Very cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, how did I, I'm trying to remember like my first like favorite series of books. I want to say that they were probably the Wayside School books. Did you ever read those?
Oh, yeah.
Those were like, I think it was like second or third grade I read those, and those were a lot of fun and, you know, real quick reads. And I kind of have had an up and down kind of relationship with reading, because like when I was in middle school and high school I read a lot, and you know, like I read To Kill a Mockingbird twice because I changed schools. And so first semester I read To Kill a Mockingbird, and then the second semester English was like, we're gonna do To Kill a Mockingbird, and I was like,
oh my god,
cool, well, I just read it. But then like All the King's Men is a book that for whatever reason I had to read it for AP English. That's like during the summer, and there was a whole bunch of like all the Pretty Horses and stuff like that have really left me, but All the King's Men has stuck with me for whatever reason. Like it's a book that really took for a while to get into. But anyway, I haven't read in a really long time because I was like, it just felt like a luxury. Like, but this year I've really made an effort to kind of get back and read stuff that I haven't read before, like Frankenstein, which I had never read before.
Mary Shelley's Frankenstein?
Yeah, and it's today is
it's her birthday.
It's her birthday.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Mary Shelley is so cool.
So cool.
She like basically invented modern horror
And science fiction.
And science fiction.
Yeah.
And I think she had her husband's heart in a jar
Dope.
Yeah.
with her.
Yeah.
Which
cool.
is just fucking cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
We should read. We said that we don't want to do like, because that's sometimes a school book. But Frankenstein is
Frankenstein's
so
awesome.
Frankenstein is really
No,
We should
when
do that on
Frankenstein
this
was
one.
a school book, in my mind it was basically a comic book because of how vivid and awesome it was. And so
And it's
when
so
I was a kid,
sad.
so sad. When I was a kid, I didn't know that the book would be from the perspective of the monster.
Yeah.
And again, because I had such a comic book brain and upbringing as a kid, when I got to it in school, I was like, oh, this is going to be a bore. Read it and I was like, this is awesome. It was so cool. And it's just so like violent and vicious, and because that version of Frankenstein I don't think has ever really been in like a movie or TV show.
Never.
No,
It's always just the jokey like
Yeah,
or
I
Robert
was
De
always a
Niro.
big fan of the Karloff movie.
Yeah.
I always thought that was really, really well done.
Yeah.
And after reading the book, I'm like, I don't actually think those
It,
movies
like,
are very
it
good
sucks.
at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it
because
sucks.
it's so bad.
Yeah,
they gotta make a good
compared to that.
Frankenstein.
That's a good one.
I read Dracula before, and
Yeah.
then Dracula's so boring that I was like, ugh.
None of the
So
monsters will be good.
So that's why I never read Frankenstein, because Dracula was boring.
Yeah.
Oh, now I want to read Dracula though.
You know what you should do
It's also
instead
boring.
is watch the
Dracula
one,
Untold?
No, the one with Gary Oldman and
Oh.
Winona
Bram Stoker's
Ryder.
Dracula.
Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Francis
Thank you,
Ford
Aaron.
Coppola.
It's a
I'm in.
choice, but
I'm
it's
in.
so great. It's
Cool.
really good.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you just read, you're reading Lovecraft, a lot of Lovecraft right now.
I've
too.
been
I
going
have
into
I haven't read any Lovecraft.
Lovecraft,
haven't
yeah.
either.
That was another one that I was like making a point to
As a
read.
nerd, you have to. You got
Yeah,
it.
you gotta.
You gotta.
And I'm really getting into it, and it's great because he was such a bad writer for a while.
Yeah.
And so you read him in order, and it's like, oh, like the ideas are all there, but he's so unrefined. And then you get to a certain point around the time he was writing a big long essay about the horror fiction.
Cool.
Right after that, he started being like a good writer, but there for a while he was just like, what did Poe do? Let me do that, but crappier. Like, but
That's cool.
Yeah, but I really like Lovecraft a lot.
I want to
Awesome.
get into that.
Well, we're super stoked that you're joining
Yeah,
us.
welcome.
Everyone in the chat, welcome. As you guys know, we're voting for new books. If you guys are just joining us, make sure you tell us what books are your favorites. They might make it onto the show. We can't wait to hear your takes on this week's read. Just a reminder, we already voted on our young adult choice for September, and
Yay.
unfortunately, the
What?
Alana series did not win. But we are going to read Lois Lowry's The Giver for next week, which I'm actually
Yay.
really excited about because I read it, I think, when I was in like 5th grade.
It's a
and
school
it
book.
That's when I read
cut
it too.
me to the core.
Oh, for sure. I
was
want to read it.
devastated.
I want to read it with you guys because I had a theory when I was a kid. I think I said this last week. I had a theory, or the week before, about what the ending was. And when I read it as a school assignment, I was so excited to go to class the next day to like talk about it. And the teacher like was just like, okay, and that's what happens at the end. And I was like, wait, I have like a take on it, and I never got to discuss it. So now I want to see if I was crazy and made it up, or if it's actually in the text.
Yeah.
Take
So-
that, teacher.
Yeah, I don't even remember the teacher. Pfft.
Yeah, clearly. Well,
This is
I'm
bad
really
teacher.
excited because we're reading The Martian Chronicles, which is one of my favorite books of all time. I read this probably in middle school because my dad had me read. I loved to read when I was little, but my dad would always try to like force certain books on me that were what he was interested in. He's a lawyer. He's like pretty much a socialist. So he really liked like sort of politically slanted books, and so he gave me Fahrenheit 451,
Yep. Sure.
which I read and loved. But then I got into Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is more spooky and super my shit. And then I read this one and just fell in love with his short stories because his novels are really, really great, but there's something about the language that he uses that I feel like is so conducive to these short stories and these like magical, sad, funny, dark, they're like vignettes. And so if you guys liked this, we'll talk about it more, but highly recommend all his short story collections. Have you guys read any Ray Bradbury before?
I read one of the few books I read growing up and really loved was Fahrenheit 451. I thought it was awesome. That was again another one that I pictured as an old classic sci-fi movie. And then we watched the old movie from the 60s or whatever.
I watched
which
that with my dad too.
I really liked, but I remember being disappointed because I was like, nah, I had cooler sci-fi and special effects in my brain, and then the movie like couldn't quite. The technology wasn't there yet. Now they could do it. Now they could do it and do anything that book was talking about. They could do anything in this that Bradbury's talking about. But I did read it and I did like it, and I should have remembered that that book was really fucked up. Because I started reading this and I was like, hey, this is real sad. This is really sad and fucked up. All of these are fucked up. Oh, cool. Okay, great. So it took me a minute to remember because I also put on the soundtrack for one of my favorite Mars movies, John Carter, the Disney 2012 movie. Why would you laugh at that? Why would you laugh at it? It's a legit movie that most people haven't seen, and when they see it, they're actually like, oh, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Directed by Andrew Stanton, good movie. Anyway, the score is by Michael Giacchino, and it's gorgeous, and it's evocative of Lawrence of Arabia, and it's Martian, so I put it on. But because it's very inspirational, I was like, this isn't matching up at all. This is really sad.
You need like Tim Burton's The Ice Dance or something. Really sad.
Something real. I needed like, I don't know, like Last of the Mohicans or something. Some real sad, intense stuff. Anyway, but yeah, I have read that Bradbury one book before, so yeah.
You know this because we talked about it earlier. To my shame, I had never read any Bradbury until this, and I loved it so much. I read well past. I finished the book rather than just going to where we needed to go because it's such a quick read, and I
It
was
is,
also
though.
like, I want to know what like where does it go? Because even though it is individual short stories that are disconnected, it eventually starts to connect, which I thought was a really great way to do it. And I just wanted to know where he kept going, and there's some really more fucked up stuff later on. Yeah.
I thought about, we talked about whether we should just read a section or pick stories out. But if you guys liked it so far, I highly recommend finishing it because it's
I'm definitely going to finish it.
It's so timeless. This idea of it's colonization and fear of technology and fear of the other and all of these things that feel very relevant now and things that I'm picking up on that I didn't the first time I read it, the second time I read it. I've read it several times. But what's interesting too is that these were all published separately, basically. Like
Yeah.
they were
really?
in different magazines, and then they were compiled together in a book. But they throughout 1945 to 1950 was
I
when
love
these
it.
were written.
I love it.
They
That's
were
crazy.
they were published in magazines, and then he added parts and put it all together. But just and that's why sometimes the descriptions of the Martians repeat themselves a little bit in each
Gotcha.
section, and you get some of them have a slightly different tone.
Well, so far with reading up to page 95 in this version, or right before August 2001, The Settlers, it made sense because they all are separate stories. That anytime you would get a repeating, like, and here's what the Martians look like, I'd be like, cool, because the previous humans died, and they never, like, so they weren't told what these new humans don't know what the Martians look like, so
Yeah.
that's cool. So, yeah, that worked out.
Yeah, and I liked the way that he kind of in that same, because he was publishing it in different ways, maybe not necessarily intending them all to be in one book at any point. The Martians themselves are not necessarily as important as just like what they represent,
totally.
sort of, because like
Totally.
initially they seem kind of very human-like, and then we're told a bunch of times that they're kind of small, brown skin,
yeah.
and then later on, they start to be kind of more translucent and sort of, reflective later on and stuff. So it almost doesn't matter what they actually look like, because it's all about how the humans react to the Martians and meeting the Martians and being in this alien world and coming across these aliens and stuff. So yeah, I thought every time we got to a new description, I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Like, and you got to put yourself in the mind of Bradbury being like, well, now I have this idea.
Sure.
And kind of is tying it all together. I love stuff like that where it's not connected, but it is all connected.
And when anything wasn't super connected, my brain was still like easily putting it together because I wanted it all to work. And an example is like if the first settlers or the second settlers land on a certain section of Mars and it looks a certain way, and then the third settlers landed and it was like ancient ruins of different cities. In my brain, I was like, oh, they just landed on the different side of the planet.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, there's different cultures on Mars. Like, I was making it all. It's this world building in my head, even though I feel like that's not even what Bradbury's going for. But because I'm so used to sci-fi that I was like, yeah, it still makes sense. It's like different tribes in Avatar. Some are underwater. You've got the Smurfs. You've got the Snorks. Who cares? It's all on the same planet. It's fine.
Yeah, I do think there's a little bit of that though, because it's this is about humans colonizing Mars, thinking that there probably aren't any Martians there. The same, and it's in the 50s too, so you have the Martian perspective going, well, there's so much oxygen on that planet, of course people don't live there.
Too
just
much,
getting into kind of early or mid-science. But I do think that looking at the different parts of the planet and looking at colonization and the idea that there's so many things in this that you can't ever leave behind your life. You will always be with you. So if you're unhappy somewhere else, you'll probably be unhappy there.
That was great. That's classic, like Planet of the Apes stuff.
It follows you. It also plays into the idea that as a culture, you can't bring that away. That all the things you're trying to leave and start anew, get away from the atom bomb. Well, we're going to bring the atom bomb there. So it's that we're going to ruin this place just like we ruined the Earth, and that's only in 1950. We've got a long way to go of ruining the Earth. But and then there's the idea of ownership and of the native people to that planet. And so I do think that when you're up to the point that we're reading, when you get to the sort of wasteland and the ruins and everyone is gone, you're like, well, are we sure that that's what happened? Has it really affected the entire planet, or is it just this area? Do they all have telepathy? So I love
It's
that.
just one huge telepathic trick.
Yeah.
Could be.
Could
the
be.
whole thing could be. I will be honest. I was really like okay with the book, enjoying it, not loving it. All of the different stories, the different like levels of humor, the different levels of like fuck-upness, and all of the great ideas that were in it. But when we get to the last story, right before the cutoff point, which is June 2001, and the moon be still as bright, I was blown away. I was like, ooh, this has just become one of my favorite reads recently.
That easily one of the best stories in the book entirely.
Cool.
And it's sort of the cornerstone story too, because so many things kind of branch out from that.
Yeah.
You know, all the false starts we get for the first few.
Sure.
And this one is the one where it's like, well, we made it, and like, do we deserve it, kind of thing. I love that. Yeah,
that's true. I didn't even consider that, Kyle. Is that the false starts kind of ties into thematically like what that story is about too, like how men kept trying and it wasn't working out. But I want to read a part which when I read this like page or two, I was like, man, 1945 to 1950, Ray Bradbury was woke, you guys. He was on it. He was on it. And every time, listen, as somebody who like will think about the social issues of today, you cannot help but see all of those bullshit articles that are always saying like, you know, liberals are as bad as Nazis. Like, you cannot help but see this crap over and over again, that you will start to question your own opinions and positions and worldview. And there's been times where I've been like, am I too sensitive? Should actors of any color just get the part just because they're the best actor? Should all the white actors get up? Like, am I crazy? Every time I have a thought like that, I'll come across something like this, which solidifies my opinion of like, nah, racism is bullshit, and anyone who's ever been a racist knows it's bullshit. Like, they know that they're in the wrong.
Yeah.
They know that they're evil. They know they're taking advantage of people. Oppressors know they're oppressing. It's not about perspective. It's not about
That's
you know,
that exact messaging and propaganda is a tactic. It is manipulation.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
That is
So,
used for centuries.
man, but this section was amazing. It's about the astronaut, Earth astronaut, who goes crazy, but just is like so mad
What page?
that I'm on page 84.
Okay.
That they're there on Mars.
Spender.
And this is really great. This is really great. Let me see if I can find a section I want to start. They have a beautiful city there. The captain nodded at one of several places. It's not that alone. Yes, their cities are good. They knew how to blend art into their living. It's always been a thing apart for Americans. Art was something you kept in the crazy son's room upstairs. Art was something you took in Sunday doses. Mixed with religion, perhaps? Well, these Martians have art and religion and everything. You think they knew what it was all about, do you? For my money. And for that reason, you started shooting people. When I was a kid, my folks took me to visit Mexico City. I'll always remember the way my father acted, loud and big. And my mother didn't like the people because they were dark and didn't wash enough. And my sister wouldn't talk to most of them. I was the only one who really liked it. And I can see my mother and father coming to Mars and acting the same way here. Anything that's strange is no good to the average American. If it doesn't have Chicago plumbing, it's nonsense. The thought of that, oh God, the thought of that, and then the war. You heard the congressional speeches before we left. If things work out, they hope to establish 3 atomic research and atom bomb depots on Mars. That means Mars is finished. All this wonderful stuff gone. How would you feel if a Martian vomited stale liquor on the White House floor? The captain said nothing but listened. Spender continued. And then the other power interests coming up. The mineral men and the travel men. Do you remember what happened to Mexico when Cortez and his very fine good friends arrived from Spain? A whole civilization destroyed by greedy, righteous bigots. History will never forgive Cortez. You haven't acted ethically yourself today, observed the captain. What could I do? Argue with you? It's simply me against a whole crooked, grinding, greedy setup on Earth. They'll be flopping their filthy atom bombs up here, fighting for bases to have wars. Isn't it enough you've ruined one planet without ruining another? Do you have to foul someone else's manger, the simple-minded windbags? When I got up here, I felt I was not only free of their so-called culture, I felt I was free of their ethics and their customs. I'm out of their frame of reference, I thought. All I have to do is kill you off and live my own life. But it didn't work out, said the captain. No. After the 5th killing at breakfast, I discovered I wasn't all new, all Martian after all. I couldn't throw away everything I had learned on Earth so easily, but now I'm feeling steady again. I'll kill you all off. That'll delay the next trip in a rocket for a good 5 years. That was awesome. That's great. That part.
Yep.
That summed it up for me. That's great.
And it's so
Man,
true.
yeah.
It's absolutely so true.
There's nothing that's a lie in there. Everything I just read is accurate.
There was Eddie Izzard, who's one of my favorite comedians, and I know Kyle loves as well, says something about America versus Europe. And you're like, in America, you're just like, oh, this is 30 years old. Let's smash it down and put a car park here. Like, as soon as something gets to be old or
So
different
true.
or anything else, it's you have to revamp it. And it is a very American thing. And it's you know, when you go abroad, when you study abroad, when you travel abroad,
Yeah.
you can sense it immediately if you're paying attention. You're like, oh, I'm very loud. Even just like inherently around other people, I am louder than everyone here, and I need to, you know, it's just
Yeah.
a very interesting,
And
like me
That's so funny.
first mentality.
It
that you
totally,
have
and
to
it's
take out of
crazy
your
that
brain.
he was doing that in the late 40s.
I
So it was
know.
post World War II
I
when
know.
America was so full of itself.
Yeah.
It had basically marched
It
in
had
and
won.
won the war. And
the
that was
American dream was about to happen.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, you're going to have a car, you're going to have a 2-car garage,
Yeah.
you're going to have a 50s wife and a microwave, and it's going to be awesome.
every wife's going to be Donna Reed, and you're
Yeah.
going to drive a.
But then you
The
watch
Chevy.
Mad Men and you're like, oh, everyone is sad.
Yeah, yeah. But I
American
love
dream
that
is
he, even then, that close to when the worldview of America was so
At its
up,
best.
at its best, and
greatest
America's
generation.
view of
Yeah.
itself was so
Yeah,
big,
man.
and he was like, "No, we just go in and destroy everything, and we're the worst actually because we don't care because we're not that old and we don't,
That's
we're
ballsy,
just
man.
getting away from stuff
Yeah.
that which is exactly how the country was founded in the first place.
Yeah.
Yep.
we're just getting away from stuff we
That's
didn't
true.
like. So it was."
And I feel so bad because to Rachel's point earlier, like I remember a few weeks ago I was driving down in Beverly Hills somewhere, and there was this old ass mall that was like pink and very 80s for like years, and they are now finally fixing it, and I was like, oh, good, because it was like ugly to me just because
Yeah.
it was from like clearly from the 80s.
Yeah,
I'm the worst.
I know. No, you're not.
I like
You're
new
the
stuff, and I'm
greatest.
the worst. I gotta
Yeah,
travel.
I think I like too that in the section we're starting to get more into because so far with the Martians, the perspectives we're getting, and we'll get into some of the other stories because that's one of my favorites, but I have another one that I love that's really personal, like more intimate story. But we've learned about the telepathy. There are some very like cold moments that the Martians give that are chilling. There's a story I want to talk about too that just ends with like a chilling moment. But in this one, we start to learn about their culture a little bit
Yeah.
through Spender and about how they have figured out the balance between man and animal and science
Yeah.
and religion.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I really want to read The Golden Compass from His Dark Materials, everyone, is that it really deals with, that it deals with this idea that religion and science is something that I'm fascinated by, not as a not particularly religious or spiritual person, but fascinated by religion and spirituality.
And how they work together.
How they work together
Yeah.
and how many religions were built on the questions that we ask ourselves of science, and that science has learned to answer. Why does the sun rise and set this way? Oh, there's a god in a chariot pulling it across the way.
Yeah, it makes
and,
sense.
And so this part in particular makes me think like, oh gosh, how many cultures have been lost to something like this,
Oh,
and
yeah.
preserving those and the importance of that. And I do think this is like a hinge point in the book of you realize what's at stake after sort of these horrifying things happen to humans over miscommunication, over jealousy, over fear.
Yeah.
But the tables are turned and you're like, wow, we showed up and wiped out an entire people, which
Yeah.
also has happened before
Yeah.
through just our own bacteria.
Yeah, which is this book is sort of it's split, and again, we don't know necessarily if he was planning on this
Right.
becoming a book, but it fits very nicely, I think. So the first part is about how it almost exclusively how Mars reacts to us going there. The first 3 stories are all
Yes.
literally Martians reacting to human beings being there, and then this fourth major story is about after the Martians have essentially all been wiped out, and then us reacting to the fact that has happened. That's sort of, but then the next bit is all about people just being on Mars and like kind of learning that there's ghosts necessary, of Mars and these people that have disappeared and gone away, and there's even a great story which I'm sure you love called Usher 2, where a very very wealthy man has built an entire house on Mars that mimics Edgar Allan Poe stories because Edgar Allan Poe's books were burnt years ago on Earth, and so that's so the government guys come and go, well, you can't have this. This is frivolous and ridiculous,
to
and you
Mars.
can't have anything like that. And so he like sets up all of these different Poe things in it, but it's all like America or the world bringing its bullshit to Mars along with it, even though these people are trying to get away from that. And then the last bit is when everybody goes back because there's a big war on Earth, and so it's just back to being a wasteland and all this stuff. And it's really great how, and within the story of the book, it's only a few years, for the most part, and then it jumps like 20 years just to see the aftermath. But I love the fact that it's kind of it's Bradbury, so I'm getting the fact that he's not a very like happy writer, but nothing in this all of these stories that we read for this are very downbeat, and then everything for the rest of the book is pretty downbeat too. Even the ones that are kind of funnier, it still like ends in loneliness and like destruction and stuff like that.
Wait, Kyle, are you
Yeah.
saying that that on Earth they were burning books?
Yeah, that's what.
So Fahrenheit 451, is this a cinematic universe? Are they connected? Are they in the same universe?
I think that they kind of are.
I would believe that.
Oh shit.
I think he wrote Fahrenheit 451 next, maybe like
Yeah.
after this came
because
out.
he liked that idea.
and-
He's like, well, then I'll just write that.
Yeah.
I imagine that in Something Wicked This Way Comes deals with a lot of the like Americana themes that are at the beginning of the book as well. Like it's something that he was definitely drawn to.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in here.
Of the idyllic version of America from the 20s or the 50s or whatever.
Yeah.
I you know, we've discussed. I was very into super sad stuff when I was younger, and this but what I love about this is that it doesn't feel manipulative. It doesn't feel like self-pitying, and it's beautiful. There's something beautiful about acknowledging that loneliness. And one of the ones the one I loved when I first read it is the first like full story after Rocket Summer, which is also beautiful, but about Mr. and Mrs. K. And the dream that she's having.
It's
and
so sad.
It's so sad, and when I read it again, I was like, gosh, I was a dramatic teenager, but because I loved it. But this section I love because it's so personal, and you don't even meet another human. But there's this magic there, this potential magic. Why is she's dreaming of him? There's something happening. She's got telepathy, but it feels like a future.
That makes sense. It's telepathy. That's why she was dreaming
And
like
she's-
that.
and she's dreaming of him, but I love, there's one where I'll read a section. Mr. and Mrs. K had lived by the Dead Sea for 20 years, and their ancestors had lived in the same house, which turned and followed the sun flower-like for 10 centuries. 10 centuries, and then they're wiped out. Just tragic. Mr. and Mrs. K were not old. They had the fair brownish skin of the true Martian, the yellow coin eyes, the soft musical voices. Once they had liked painting pictures with chemical fire, swimming in the canals in the seasons when the wine trees filled them with green liquors, and talking into the dawn together by the blue phosphorus portraits in the speaking room. They were not happy now. This morning Mrs. K stood between the pillars, listening to the desert sand's heat melt into yellow wax and seemingly run onto the horizon. Something was going to happen. She waited. She watched the blue sky of Mars as if it might at any moment grip in on itself, contract, and expel a shining miracle down upon the sand. Nothing happened. Tired of waiting, she walked through the misting pillars. A gentle rain sprang from the fluted pillar tops, cooling the scorched air, falling gently on her. On hot days, it was like walking in a creek. The floors of the house glittered with cool streams. In the distance, she heard her husband playing his book steadily, his fingers never tired of the old songs. Quietly, she wished he might one day again spend as much time holding and touching her like a little harp as he did his incredible books. But no. She shook her head, an imperceptible, forgiving shrug. Her eyelids closed softly down upon her golden eyes. Marriage made people old and familiar while still young. I mean, that's beautiful. And that's so... It's from a, technical standpoint of how he's writing it, she's weaving through
her life,
the initial idea of this saucer, basically kind of rocket coming down. You're getting a visual of what this alien world is like that's beautiful and strange and musical, and then this universal thing that can happen with people when they don't
married.
spend time working on their relationships and all these things that are so universal and so sad.
And it's
just
such a great
crushes me.
story, and it's Mr. K initially just laughs off her dreams, like, whatever, these are silly dreams. And then he starts to realize that she likes that more than anything he's done.
She's waking up.
So, right, she's exactly doing that. And he's like, well, let's go do something, and she's just like, nah, it's fine.
It's too late.
And so then he's completely jealous, and like the end of that story is such a gut punch, because we feel like we know that Earth guy through her description of him.
He was like a good dude.
He was, and
he's coming to take her away from this life that I feel like, especially the time that this is written, when we're talking about the sort of Donna Reed type wives that are at home, that are waiting, that having someone to come, maybe there isn't any other way for you to be taken away out of this life, and to have that close to you and you can feel it, and something's going to happen, and then you know that it was ripped away from you by the person that you have spent your life with, is just like, that sets the tone for the whole thing for
It really
me.
does. And to start it with that, with like, there's not actually all that many female characters in the book. There's a few, but a lot of times they don't take the lead. And to start with her as being the conduit, and to start, first of all, through the eyes of Martians, learning what humans are, not even through direct interaction. I thought that was such a really great way to, to bring you into this kind of world, because it is so sad and so lyrical, and it kind of lets you know about Martians and how, maybe under different circumstances we would all kind of maybe get along, for the right reasons, but not when your husband has a bee rifle.
Well, there's also this fear, which I know you guys are talking about in the chat, this idea of being afraid that some strange creature, like we always think about what we would do if aliens landed. There are many movies about it, and it's a frightening thing.
I think we've figured out every single possible angle of that.
Yeah.
But but every time I really consider it for reals, I can't help but think about Stephen Hawking, who's like, no, we don't want aliens to land because they will kill us.
Yeah.
They will be so far advanced from us that they will
could
oppress
be like an
us.
ant.
They will, yeah, exactly. And so I'm like, he's a smart guy. I'll listen to him.
I think the most likely one is Mars attacks. Yeah.
You think so? Ack.
Yeah, is them coming to kill us, and also I love the that sort of happens with this too, the miscommunication of the dove, where they're like, peace, and they're like, was it that? Is that the thing that made us kill us? And that happens with the next bit.
Can I read some from this?
Yes, it's so, this one is like the funniest one in this section.
The Earthmen, August 1999, the Earthmen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the second expedition. So you had the first expedition, which we don't even really know how it happened other than
a guy
Mr.
was
K killed the
you
guy.
hear the shots, and then in the next one they're like, we don't know what happened to him and his poor assistant who was there with him. And they're like, well, we send another one out.
So we have, I'll just read from the beginning. Whoever was knocking at the door didn't want to stop. Mrs. T threw the door open. Well, you speak English? The man standing there was astounded. I speak what I speak, she said. It's wonderful English! The man was in uniform. There were 3 men with him, in a great hurry, all smiling, all dirty. What do you want? Demanded Mrs. T. You are a Martian, the man smiled. The word is not familiar to you, certainly. It's an Earth expression, he nodded to his men. We are from Earth. I'm Captain Williams. We've landed on Mars within the hour. Here we are, the second expedition. There was a first expedition, but we don't know what happened to it. But we are here. Anyway. And you were the first Martian we've met. Martian? Her eyebrows went up. What I mean to say is you live on the 4th planet from the sun, correct? Elementary, she snapped, eyeing them.
Ugh.
And he pressed his chubby pink hand to his chest. We are from Earth, right, men? Right, sir, a chorus. This is the planet Tur, she said, if you want to use the proper name. Tur, the captain laughed exhaustedly. What a fine name. But my good woman, how do you speak such perfect English? I'm not speaking, I'm thinking. Telepathy, good day. And she slammed the door. A moment later, there was a dreadful man knocking again. She whipped the door open. What now? She wondered. The man was still there, trying to smile, looking bewildered. He put out his hands. I don't think you understand. And that sort of is the whole story.
And it's so frustrating.
This is
hilarious.
Kafka. This is Kafka entirely. And it's them getting passed around from these different Martian people who are just going, well, you want to go talk to, and they all have Mr. or Mrs., consonant repeated. And then it turns out that there's a lot, because of the first expedition, all these people started having Earthling notions. Yeah. And so there's a ton of people who just think that they're Earthlings and have manifested themselves as Earthlings. And they have these great, apparently, hallucination. They can project their hallucinations. And so people just think they're insane. They're just, and that he's only one man who's projecting his friends.
It's like, should I have them all sign the paperwork? And they're like,
that's ridiculous.
You silly man. I love
it.
How excited they are, and they're trying. And each time they're like, oh,
okay, maybe the next one they'll
Yeah.
throw a party, and they're like, couldn't you just throw us a party or something, or shake my hand?
We came a really long way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then they do get a party by all of the inmates in the insane asylum. They're like, we're from Earth too, and then they're so excited, and it was so funny. Again, reminding me of classic science fiction, Planet of the Apes, when the astronauts land and it's only Charlton Heston. Of course, his like vocal cords get shredded, and the other guy gets like shot, so he gets lobotomized. So the humans can't speak until he finally goes, "Get your hand," and says it. And that frustrating thing of not being able to speak. The same with these characters not being able to like accurately describe who they are and where they're from. And what I loved more than anything was the ending was this great gut punch of the therapist being like, well, I'll cure it right now, poof. And then the projections are still there. Wow, this ship is amazing. All right, I'll just kill the rest of them, poof, poof, poof. And then he's like, oh my God, now they've infected me. And then he kills himself. It was so funny and sad and fucked up. It was so great.
Yeah.
And you're just like, wow, that sucks.
Yeah. Never once does it cross anybody's mind
That it
they're
could be.
telling the truth.
Yeah,
Could be the
Because
truth.
it's so ridiculous.
What would
Yeah.
it be like to live? I mean, that's a nightmare. People can project their own stuff onto you.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Into
That-
your brain, into your...
I wouldn't want
Well,
any
is
part
it
of
though?
that.
Is it? What's the difference between that and how human beings have developed language? I'm communicating to you right now by making random ass noises out of the muscles in my head.
Because
And you
you're
understand
not
it
changing
through
my
just
perception, but
memorization.
you're not
Aren't I
changing
though? Aren't
not
I?
making- what if-
Nonverbal communication.
I think
I mean-
maybe.
What's the difference? I could
I
do
think-
things with my hand that there are people who cannot see that won't see it. And
Yeah.
you are. Does that mean you have an advantage, some sort of like crazy advantage over them? Or are we all just, or is it just something you're used to versus something
No,
they're used to?
I think it's like the idea of boundaries with reading someone's mind, that concept, but
Sure,
also if you could project something on just like, you can't make me right now think that I'm a million miles in the air walking a tightrope, which would be my
true.
literal worst nightmare.
That's true.
VR can do that. This is a tangent, but I had a really fun / weird VR experience where I was trying this game called Waltz of the Wizard, which is really fun because you make potions and you can do all this.
Oh, cool.
You can pretend you're a supervillain, basically.
Nice.
That's really fun. But there was some weird, like, it was like a drawbridge over a cliff or like over the Grand Canyon. And I'm in an office in Venice. I know I'm in an office in Venice. And I'm walking in my crippling fear of heights. So I was just like, and I like almost had to get down on the ground because it felt like so real that I was on. So that to me is horrifying.
Yeah.
And because this proves that people are terrible, we know that. I don't trust people with that ability.
People are terrible. I would trust Martians with that ability because in the first story, Mr. and Mrs. K didn't seem to. They even had communication problems, and they have telepathy. So I feel like in their society,
But
they're
I think
used
that's
to it,
so
and they're
social
Yeah.
issue. She's choosing not to do that because of their relationship, not
Sure.
because she can't.
and he's choosing the same for his wife. And I feel like Martians probably have an understanding that only gets messed up again when the first expedition lands. Humans infect that. So
Yeah.
certain Martians go like, "Oh, I'm from Earth too," and they go insane, and they picture themselves as people with telepathy, which is again bad. But Martians with telepathy, that's just something they're used
You know,
to.
there's so many stories in this, even just the first section, but then also throughout the rest, where a human and a Martian are trying to connect in some way and
Yeah.
they can't.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. There's various different reasons in the book for why. And and then simultaneously there are humans who live on Mars who are trying to connect and they can't. In various different. There's one where after everybody leaves, a guy is like, I can't be the only one left here. And so he just starts making random phone calls and hoping that a woman picks up. And then she does. And he's like, oh my God, this is great. And so he has to drive 1,000 miles to go find her. And then they pass each other because she decides to do the same thing.
Great.
And then they eventually meet and he's like, oh. And then
It's like The Last Man on Earth.
yeah, it's exactly like
Yeah,
it's very
The
similar
Last
to
Man
that.
on
But
Earth
it's
ripped off
all of these like
Bradbury.
missed connections and people trying to create family in a place where they can't, or just
Yeah.
and you get the sense that essentially humans and Martians kind of just want the same thing
Sure. Yeah.
from each other, but
They don't know
because
how.
of
Just like
circumstances
people,
they can't.
man.
It's
Yeah.
it's
We all want the same thing.
Yeah.
But circumstances.
And it's funny too because there's a tendency to view a whole group by the actions of a few.
You don't say.
Yeah, I was like, how do
That's
I
a thing?
put this?
Oh, that's
And
crazy.
that's happening here with the Martians, where they don't understand the rocket ship, and so they're wary, and then the next one they're wary of people going crazy, and then by the next one, I mean, that's some nefarious shit.
Oh,
in
man,
that
let's
one.
that's
talk
like
about
an
that
evil
one.
plot. Yeah,
Yeah.
that one's
Wow.
That one, let's talk about it, but I want to read the end because
It is conveniently called the Third Expedition.
it's let me find it. Oh, good old Mars. So it's
I think it's page 62, 63 is the end.
yes.
So
thank
messed
you.
up. So messed up.
I know. So for anyone who hasn't read it, you should. But thanks for joining us anyway. But so in this story, this bigger expedition shows up. Right.
They keep adding more and more people every
Yeah,
time.
they're like,
Yeah, that's the
okay,
solution.
maybe
Yeah.
That's the
maybe we
solution.
need like an army at this
Jurassic
point.
Park didn't work. Jurassic World.
That's get
Just
a million
keep doing
people.
the same thing, and it'll
bigger.
turn out
More.
fine.
But more.
So they have a great idea, which is like, okay, clearly something's going on here that they're not making it, because the second expedition lasted 2 days before so they didn't crash on arrival. Something's going on here. So maybe we'll leave everyone here, safe on the ship. We'll go out and see what's going on. And they realize that I love that it's this town in the 20s built from the mind of the captain.
Yeah.
Who they're pulling basically with telepathy. They're pulling from his memories and building this town that represents home. It represents and start creating their family, their deceased family members, which is just so fucked up.
Lost the numbers in the chat says, oh, look, my sweet old grandmother. What could go wrong?
Exactly.
So much goes wrong, and so it starts out, and you're like, okay, maybe it's just his life, and then everyone comes out. And one of the three men is like, "What? They're all coming outside!" And then immediately sees his brother and is like, "Oh, okay, our dead
brother.
relatives are there."
Edward.
And you feel that it's wrong before they do.
Yeah.
But this scene, it's a little long, but I'm gonna read it anyway. So just this is my favorite book. Okay, so I'll start here. He had the most ridiculous theory quite suddenly. Page 60. It gave him a kind of chill. It was really nothing to reconsider, of course. Highly improbable. Silly. Forget it. Ridiculous. But he thought, just suppose now that there were Martians living on Mars, and they saw our ship coming, and saw us inside our ship, and hated us. Suppose now, just for the hell of it, that they wanted to destroy us as invaders, as unwanted ones, and they wanted to do it in a very clever way, so that we would be taken off guard. Well, what would the best weapon be that a Martian could use against Earthman with atomic weapons? The answer was interesting. Telepathy, hypnosis, memory, and imagination. Suppose all of these houses aren't real at all, this bed not real, but only figments of my own imagination, given substance by telepathy and hypnosis through the Martians, thought Captain John Black. Suppose these houses are really some other shape, a Martian shape, but by playing on my desires and wants, these Martians have made this seem like my old hometown, my old house, to lull me out of my suspicions. What better way to fool a man, using his own mother and father as bait? And this town so old, from the year 1926, long before any of my men were born. From a year when I was 6 years old and there were records of Harry Lauder and Maxfield Parrish paintings still hanging, and bead curtains and beautiful Ohio and turn-of-the-century architecture. What if Martians took the memories of a town exclusively from my mind? They say childhood memories are the clearest. And after they built the town from my mind, they populated it with the most loved people from all the minds of the people on the rocket. And suppose these two people in the next room asleep are not my mother and father at all, but two Martians, incredibly brilliant, with the ability to keep me under this dreaming hypnosis all of the time. I'm going to skip this big part because it's... wouldn't it be horrible and terrifying to discover that all of this was part of some great clever plan by the Martians to divide and conquer us and kill us? Sometime during the night, perhaps, my brother here on this bed will change form, melt, shift, and become another thing, a terrible thing, a Martian. It would be very simple for him to just turn over in bed and put a knife into my heart. And in all those other houses down the street, a dozen other brothers or fathers suddenly melting away and taking knives and doing things to the unsuspecting sleeping men of Earth. His hands were shaking under the covers. His body was very cold. Suddenly it was not a theory. Suddenly he was very afraid. He lifted himself in bed and listened. The night was very quiet. The music had stopped. The wind had died. His brother lay sleeping beside him. Carefully he lifted the covers, rolling them back. He slipped from bed and was walking softly across the room when his brother's voice said, "Where are you going?" "What?" His brother's voice was quite cold. I said, "Where do you think you're going?" "For a drink of water." "But you're not thirsty." "Yes, yes, I am." "No, you're not." Captain John Black broke and ran across the room. He screamed. He screamed twice. He never reached the door. That's some chilling shit right
I just
there.
got goosebumps.
Right?
And then
When
the
you-
crazy thing at the end, like the wrap up of that story is that even though this is a fictional town full of fictional dead relatives specifically for this
Oh,
group of people,
yeah.
they continue that facade and act like they're sad that their family members just got murdered by them.
Yeah.
And so they go and bury them because of
And-
residual memory and stuff.
And while they're burying them, their faces will go from like grandfather to something else back to grandfather.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of shifting out of that.
Yeah.
But they still have that residual memory.
And I
that
love
they,
that he
Ugh.
keeps saying something else. and it's
Something
like-
else.
Yeah, something.
Man.
And it's that body snap. It's
Forgot about that
and
one.
it's this classic 50s sci-fi thing
Yeah.
of the imposter.
Yeah. Right around this time, there was a movie that came out called Invaders from Mars, which was the first movie like that, where a kid starts to think that his parents have been replaced by somebody else.
know.
And following, there's a big light in the sky, and it turns out he's right. But his family and then his teachers, everybody is sort of just like suddenly different.
Yeah.
Seeming the same. That's a classic.
Definitely.
Classic of just paranoia, and it sort of became, in film, like they used to do that for the Red Scare. They would like
course.
make movies like that, but that was, it's not we're replacing the president or replacing
it's hometown.
it's your mom.
It's your mom.
Yeah, man.
My,
All through the Cold War. That always reminds me of like
Oh, yeah.
G.I. Joe versus Cobra. The reason Cobra Commander is such a scary villain is because he's a homegrown terrorist
Yeah.
who convinces an entire town through a pyramid scheme, no joke, through a pyramid scheme, recruits all of the young able-bodied men in that town to like join Cobra, an evil terrorist organization. So like the mall itself like opens up and then there's like a nuclear silo in there that they've all like that's what's so scary.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
It's someone close to you. My dad, when I was little, so weird. My dad, when I would go stay with him on nights that I was at my dad's
Would
house,
pretend to be an alien. That's
he
so
had
fucked
this.
up, Rachel.
He had this kid. My dad. I'm gonna bring him on sometime. 'cause
Oh, I'm an alien
would,
now.
He would love to know that I keep bringing him up.
You just put on those weird glasses with lights on them, and
Yeah.
Well,
that's
he
all it
did
took.
this so he would do this thing that I think he thought was funny because he would
Dads
like
always do.
bring me like mac and cheese on a tray or something. And he'd be like, "The waiter is here," and do like a thing. But the way he did, like he
Sounds
was
like a dad.
yeah, like a
Just
waiter.
sounds like a dad.
But the way he did it, I think I would be like, "No, like where's my dad?" And he'd be like, "He's gone," and I was like, "No." Oh my
I knew
God,
it.
who are you?
I knew it.
And and of course when I did that, it delighted him. So he
Yeah.
did it all the time.
Yeah. He's
And
gone.
if I brought it up now, he would do it, and it would freak me out to this day because there's something about the person that you love not actually being the person that you love, and it feels that's similar to the first story that we have of not knowing this
Yeah.
person, not knowing that they're capable of that
Yeah, like a bunch of grandparents basically kill their grandkids in that story,
Yeah.
essentially.
in their
Like,
beds.
ugh,
Yeah.
brothers and stuff. Like, I don't think that this is that heaven exists, but just in case it does,
Yeah.
and when you arrive at the pearly gates, it's a bunch of your dead loved ones. I'm gonna be so paranoid. I'm gonna punch them all in the head and be
Right?
like, "Stop, Hector! Stop! It's your grandfather." "No, you're not. You're an alien. What is this, Mars? Get out of here, Grandpa!"
And they even, because he brings that up, where they're like, why would you question it? This,
Yeah.
this is just what happened after we died.
Here's your childhood dog. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
No.
And I was like, for the
You're
first little bit,
aliens.
I was like, is this
Yeah.
just a story
Mars.
about people being dead?
Well,
I was trying to sci-fi it too. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, is it when you die, your soul, which is just like your consciousness, just like clones itself into a body on Mars? I'm like, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so like for a half a second,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
justified it even.
It could be anything, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you know, you don't know that it could be reincarnation. You could wake up. They have that conversation, but it's also there's sort of this is like one of those like college stoner conversations that you have where you're like,
Let's get into it.
yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
I see is the same red you see.
Yes, yes, exactly. My friend.
Wait,
Alex-
do you have a mic? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Rachel, you should repeat what.
Yeah. What if the red that I see isn't the red that you see? And it is. It's like speaking of language, we use language to describe things. You're like, okay, that's gray or that's red. How do you know that we're seeing the same thing? How do you know that round
Memorization.
isn't
Wait.
square?
Oh
Yeah.
shit.
That angles isn't curves. You don't know any of
Yeah.
that. It's all language.
Have you ever seen the movie Mask? Not The Mask with Jim Carrey, but Mask with Eric Stoltz?
Yes.
I was gonna say yes, but then you said not The Mask, so I'm gonna say
I've seen
no. I
both.
haven't seen Mask yet with Eric Stoltz
With
and
Eric
Cher.
Stoltz, where and Cher
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I
Sam
haven't seen it
Elliott,
yet.
and it's about a real guy who had some sort of, I think it was elephantitis or something like that, where his face was distorted in some way to the way that we normally see faces. And so one summer he's working at a summer camp for blind people, and he falls in love with Laura Dern, as anyone would,
Sure.
who is blind, and he's trying to
When did that movie come out?
like 84 or 5.
Laura Dern was probably like 16,
Yeah.
dude. Laura Dern was like, people think Laura Dern's been working, or that she's older than she is, because she was, when Jurassic Park came out in like 93, she was like 22 or something. She was
Yeah.
like super
Yeah.
young.
That's bonkers.
So she
has in fact been working.
yeah,
she
because
was a
she was
child.
She's great.
because she was super young with Sam Neill. So
Anyway,
she's
so yeah,
in the thing, falls in love with Laura Dern.
So he's like talking about like, oh, you know, he's just kind of casually mentioning colors, and she's like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And so he devises this whole thing to like, he's like, I'm going to tell you what colors are.
Yeah.
And so like, or things that are visual. And so he heats up a rock, and he's like, hold out your hand, and he'd been boiling a rock, and he drops it, and she's like, ow, and he's like, that's red.
Yeah.
And then he does the same thing with a rock in the freezer, and he's like, that's blue. And then like,
That's
kind of
cool.
like just kind of tepid, kind of cold water. He's like, that's green. And then he gives her, because he was talking about the clouds and how pillowy they are. And so he hands her a bunch of cotton. He's like, this is a cloud and stuff like that. It's such a
That's
great
cool.
movie,
That's
first of all.
awesome.
But it's that same type of thing where it's like you need to find words to.
Yeah.
We give meaning to words. There are different languages on earth, like Japanese, where there are 7 different words for the same thing, and concepts that we don't have words
Yes.
for.
Yes.
Which is, there's this word
I
called
learned that from Animaniacs too. Yeah.
yeah.
The Inuit people have like tons, maybe like tens of words for ice, but no word for like hello or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Some weird little factoid like that.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
there are a couple in Italian that are like, they're ways to live. They're like,
Yeah.
they're like
absolutely.
scribes. Like a sprezzatura is like an uncanny luck combined with hard work and the right place at the right time.
Sprezzatura.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a really great book that goes into like scientists and different people and how they had
Cool.
Italian
Wait,
sprezzatura.
repeat that again. It's luck combined with being
It's-
at the right place at the right time.
And hard work. It's that
And hard
combo
work.
of like, because you had luck to be in the right place at the right time, but you were also extremely talented
Sprezzatura.
and ended up in that spot.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a cool book. Okay, I have one more to blow your minds before we wrap up, and it's alien themed.
Great.
This was one that someone told me.
Remember when I blew your mind and made you real sad with my thought about what life is? I won't repeat it.
No.
It really made you sad.
Oh no.
I won't do it. You
Was
do
it-
yours.
Do it. No,
I won't do
gotta.
it. You do yours.
Kyle has to know.
I don't know.
Okay, what if we're not actually alive right now,
Oh yeah.
but we're dying and we're just like
Oh yeah.
like going through the flash of living our
Yeah.
entire life?
What if our life is a Jacob's Ladder scenario?
Yeah,
Yes.
sure, yeah.
I get it.
That would explain a lot. What if? Okay. What if?
Okay.
What if 5 minutes ago, aliens implanted all of your memories and you were just created right now?
That's Blade Runner.
Yeah, it's a lot.
yeah.
Matrix.
But like,
Shit.
Yeah.
but like, how do you know?
yeah.
You don't.
How do you know?
You don't know.
Could be.
How do you know that any of the people that we've been talking to?
Mm-hmm.
There was a very, very, very old Greek philosopher whose name I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
One of the earliest, well before most people, who was like, the only thing that we know is that we exist
That's it.
Yeah.
now. We don't even know that the past happened or that
Yeah.
the future is going to happen.
Yeah.
All we know is this exact moment. And there's like what separates you and I right now?
You're saying stuff that I'm not thinking of.
Sure. What is I mean, he essentially asks questions.
Oh, space?
What separates
Yeah.
you in the space?
Molecules.
Molecules. What separates you molecules from those molecules?
That's easy. Closer molecules.
Right.
Wait, shit.
So you get smaller and smaller and smaller until you eventually just go nothing. Nothing separates. And so he goes, "That's exactly right. Nothing.
We're all connected.
We're all
the same
connected. We're all
person.
the same thing, which
We're all
means
the
we're all
same thing.
one thing, thinking about itself, because that's all we know is ourself. So we're thinking about ourself in this instant. So everything in the whole wide world or the universe is one thing thinking about itself now.
Why is there
gonna throw
wars? Why is there wars? Why do people hate each other? We're all the same
It's
thing.
all an illusion.
Oh my God.
Alpha Book Club, y'all.
Yeah.
Getting real. All right. Hopefully
Yeah, I'm
everyone
gonna finish it.
finishes
I'm
this
gonna
book.
finish it.
It's so good.
I just haven't had time this week, but I definitely
Would
will.
you recommend this to other people? This is my
Absolutely.
favorite book to recommend.
DeMarco
for
Draws
people.
asks, why would I have these memories and know these people? What purpose would it serve? You're an experiment,
You're
bruh.
an experiment.
Experiment. Obviously, aliens are
Yeah.
messing with you.
They just want to see what you're gonna do.
Why do you play a video game? Why? Why are you Link in Hyrule? Why? Why do you do it? Why do you play it? Aliens are playing you right now, dude. You're getting played right now.
You can play.
You're
So
getting played.
we're all in The Sims. That's the easiest thing to explain. Sorry.
No wonder there's this diamond over my head all the
Out
time.
of here.
Didn't they just add puppies and cats to Sims? I want more of those. Give me more of those around me all the time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you guys finish this and chat with us about it on Twitter. Your homework next week, and hopefully you'll join along and chat with us,
Sure.
Kyle, and come back anytime. This is awesome.
Thank you so
Yay,
much.
Kyle. Yay.
Thanks, guys. That was a blast.
So for next time, we're reading up to chapter 5. The end of chapter 5 in The Giver. So stop at the beginning of chapter 6. Don't forget we're on Goodreads. I have a Goodreads list it's mostly thrillers, but it's 100 million books long, so help me add more to it. Search Alpha Book Club, come discuss with us. I want to start a thread. Someone tweeted at me the other day and said, can you start a chain of all the books that you've put up that haven't been voted in, and I will happily do so that we can talk about them. If you're interested in joining us, you can Skype into the show. Just let us know on Twitter with the hashtag Alpha Book Club at Join Team Alpha, and Courtney will get you all set up. Promise we don't bite. It's really fun. Send your book recommendations into at Nerdist, at Geek and Sundry, or at Join Team Alpha with the hashtag Alpha Book Club. Kyle, before we go, where can everyone find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Functional Nerd. I tweet quite a lot, as both of you know.
Great handle. Great handle.
Thank you very much. And you can read everything that I write all the time on Nerdist.com. And you can catch me several times a week on Nerdist News Talks Back at 1 p.m. PST on Nerdist YouTube and Alpha.
So much fun. And Hector, where can everyone find you?
On the internet, I'm going to be on stuff. If Twitch is back, I'll be on Twitch. If not, I'm on Alpha for the next 6 hours, 5 hours, 4 hours.
Hector lives here.
Yep.
We keep him here all day long. And you can find me on Nerdist and all the Nerdist things and at Rachel Heine. And if you want to talk about books, or if you read The Golden Compass and you want to talk about that, just let me know. We'll see you next week.
What if I watch the movie?
Bye!